Hello, my name is Lynn, and this presentation will document my creative and technical development throughout the short film 4 module. During this module, I worked as the head makeup artist and designer across two short film productions titled Sunny Side Up and Worm God. Sunny Side Up is a psychological thriller horror focused on Nathan, an overworked and sleep-deprived man who becomes obsessed with a ticking egg timer and must constantly reset to prevent something unknown from happening. Throughout the film, his paranoia and exhaustion progressively worsens until a timer finally rings and a monstrous creature known as the Thing appears. Worm God is a black and white psychological horror film focused on an isolated old worm picker who obsessively cares for his worms and worships a large worm shrine before things begin to unravel as the worms mysteriously start dying. Both films explored themes of paranoia, obsession, isolation, and psychological deterioration through visual storytelling without dialogue, meaning that makeup played an important role in communicating the emotional and physical state of the characters. Throughout this presentation, I'll discuss my research, design development, practical experimentation, collaboration, continuity planning, and final reflection across both productions. The module began with the filmmaking students pitching their short film ideas to both their classmates and the makeup department. Out of all the projects presented, Sunny Side Up and Worm God stood out the most to me. I was really drawn to the unsettling atmosphere and psychological horror elements in both films, especially the themes of obsession and deterioration. For Worm God, I loved how strange and uncomfortable the concept felt. Sunny Side Up immediately interested me because of the potential design for the Thing. Since I'm especially interested in special effects, makeup, and body horror, I felt these projects aligned really well with my own creative style and would allow me to challenge both my technical and creative skills. As makeup artists, we were then asked to select projects we were interested in and create our own makeup pitches in response to the filmmakers' ideas and scripts. After selecting the projects I wanted to work on, I began creating mood boards and sketches and began creating my own makeup pitch for each production. I began each pitch by introducing myself as a makeup artist and my approach to collaboration, my previous work, and what I would bring to the production. Sunny Side Up consisted of two characters, the main character named Nathan and the mysterious creature-like character named The Thing. So for Nathan, I researched how insomnia, stress, and paranoia physically affected the body and face. I focused on details like under-eye darkness, hollow cheeks, sweat, irritation, and messy grooming habits. I designed multiple progression stages for Nathan, starting with a more controlled office appearance before gradually making him look more exhausted and unstable as the film progressed. For The Thing, I explored a much more experimental body horror approach inspired by films and games such as Silent Hill, Smile, and Resident Evil. I created two main design concepts for The Thing. The first design focused on a more corpse-like and skeletal appearance, including hollowed eyes, exposed teeth, torn facial features, and exaggerated bone structure. My second design explored a more infected and malnourished look inspired by body horror aesthetics, featuring sunken facial features, wet thinning hair, blisters, discoloration, and slimy skin textures. For Worm God, I focused more on environmental storytelling through dirt, sweat, aging, damaged hands, and physical strain. I presented options such as aging effects, using stipple techniques, beard work, and if necessary, prestige application. Dirt and grime buildup, muddy nails and hands, tired eyes, and subtle injuries that could suggest repetitive labor and self-destructive behavior. I also proposed practical effects ideas to the director, including potentially sculpting or molding artificial worms if access to live or dead worms became difficult during production. The following week, we had our first crew meeting. These meetings gave me the opportunity to sit down with both directors and discuss my pitches, initial designs, and ideas in more depth, while also beginning the collaborative planning process for the productions. For Sunny Side Up, the director Beth responded very positively to my pitch and particularly liked the progressive deterioration I had designed for Nathan throughout the film. The majority of the feedback discussion focused on The Thing, as this character relied much more heavily on interpretation, experimentation, and collaborative visual development. Beth was especially drawn to the second design I had created, particularly the wet hair, infected textures, hollowed eyes, and overall malnourished appearance. She also gave me constructive feedback regarding certain aspects of the creature that did not fully align with her vision. For example, she felt that the sharp monster's teeth made the design feel too overtly creature-like. Instead, she wanted the monster to retain more human characteristics. She also wanted to push the skin tones further towards sickly yellows, purples, and include veining to create more diseased and physical disturbing appearance. I found this feedback extremely valuable because it allowed me to refine my work collaboratively rather than becoming too attached to my original concepts. On Worm God, the meeting was somewhat different because the Wormpicker character required much more subtle and realistic design approach. The director responded positively to my ideas, particularly the environmental storytelling aspects such as dirt buildup, aging, and sweat. Following the initial crew meetings, I began creating my script breakdowns for both productions. This became one of the most important parts of my pre-production process, as it allowed me to analyze the progression of the characters scene by scene while planning continuity, practical effects requirements, environmental build-up, and makeup application logistics. For each scene, I broke down the emotional state of the character alongside the physical appearance requirements in order to ensure the makeup supported the narrative progression throughout the films. For Sunny Side Up, I focused heavily on Nathan's gradual exhaustion, paranoia, and psychological collapse. I mapped out how elements such as under-eye darkness, skin tone, redness, texture, sweat, irritation, facial hollowness, and self-grooming progressively changed throughout the story. For Worm God, the breakdown focused more heavily on environmental continuity and physical grime buildup. Because the character constantly interacts with soil, worms, and outdoor labor, I carefully tracked the progression of dirt, sweat, mud, damaged hands, and physical exhaustion throughout each scene. Throughout the module, we continued having weekly crew meetings where we discussed planning, scheduling, and logistics. During this, I kept evolving my designs as we got more information about the productions and actors. Quite early on, we found the actor for the Wormpicker in Worm God. Once he was cast, I drew my makeup designs directly onto a headshot of the actor so I could get a better idea of how the final look would work with his natural features. The actor already naturally suited the role really well, especially with his hair and beard, so instead of completely transforming him, I focused more on enhancing the features he already had. I also designed concepts specifically for the character's hands, experimenting with dirt, damaged nails, and small details like a bandage around the hand. For Sunny Side Up, I continued redesigning the thing based off the feedback Beth had given me during our crew meetings. I kept the hollowed eyes, wet hair, and infected textures that she liked, but I removed some of the more exaggerated monster features, like the sharp teeth, to make the creature feel more human and unsettling. I focused more on the sickly skin tones, veining, blisters, and thin greasy hair to create a body horror look that still felt grounded in realism. During this stage, I also created more polished digital designs and final face charts for the characters. I also made a small concept illustration of Nathan holding the egg timer while the thing stands behind him. By this point, I felt very confident in the final direction of all of the designs and was ready to begin planning the practical realization and test shoot stage. Out of all the characters, the Thing required the most experimentation and testing because it involved special effect makeup, prosthetics, texture work, and much more stylized horror design. For the Thing, I carried out a full test shoot on my classmate Cecily to experiment with the overall appearance, prosthetic placement, textures, color palette, and how the makeup translated on camera. I created and applied my own prosthetic pieces to build infected skin textures and blister-like effects across the face. I also experimented with discoloration, using yellows, purples, and veining to create a sickly, unhealthy appearance, while still keeping some human realism within the creature. After completing the first makeup test for the Thing, Beth gave me detailed feedback on the design, which helped me refine the final look further. One of the main points we discussed was the color palette and texture of the infected areas. She felt that some of the redness around the boils appeared too bright and suggested pushing the colors more towards deeper reds and browns to create a darker, more realistic infected effect. We also discussed the placement of the prosthetic boils. A few of the prosthetics felt less visually effective and were later removed from the final design. Beth provided additional reference images featuring glossy burnt skin textures mixed with dark browns, deep reds, and patchy wet hair. After receiving feedback from the first test shoot, I carried out a second makeup test, this time using the actual actor Sophia, who had been cast as the Thing. Before the test shoot, I completed a patch test with all the products and materials I planned on using to make sure there were no allergic reactions or skin sensitivities. For the second test, I adjusted the makeup based on all the feedback Beth had given me after the first application. One of the biggest changes was the burn effect on the face. I also experimented using a burn sheet to create a cracked, charred texture across the face. I also included the wig during this test shoot to help visualize the full character design together for the first time. Health and safety was very important throughout both productions, especially while working with special effect products, prosthetics, adhesives, and edible effects. For Worm God, I also had to carefully consider the safety of the products used around the mouth and ear areas during scenes involving vomit effects and slime application. I made sure that any edible dirt or materials used were safe for consumption, skin contact, and close facial application. I also ensured that all the products used for these effects were vegan friendly, as this actor was a vegan. Throughout the module, I also followed standard hygiene practices by sanitizing brushes and tools, decanting products where needed, washing hands between application, maintaining a clean workstation during both test shoots and filming days. I also created a process risk assessment for both productions of the makeup effects used throughout the productions in order to prepare for any potential hazards or sensitivities on set. Continuity and planning became a very important part of the production process throughout both films, especially because the makeup designs relied heavily on gradual physical deterioration and environmental storytelling. Another important part of the planning process was preparing a product list, prosthetic materials, timing estimates, and application notes ahead of the shoots. As we shot all scenes in different orders, this really helped me keep track on what makeup needed to be applied for each scene and shoot day. I organized my makeup continuity around the official shot list provided by the producers for both films, which helped me stay consistent even when filming scenes from completely different parts of the story on the same day. The first production to film was Worm God, which was shot over 2 days at Pleasant Rise Farm in Alfriston. Since the makeup relied more on subtle realism, the application itself was fairly quick, and I focused on tired eyes, dirt buildup, sweat, damaged hands, and environmental grime. I deepened the under eye using my Kryolan Bruise Wheel and Kryolan Supercolors to create realistic dark circles and hollowing around the eyes. I used dirt sprays and powders using splatter techniques, nicotine tooth paint, and fake mud to create the character's neglected and obsessive appearance. Finally, I applied the fake mud across the actor's hands, focusing heavily around the nails, knuckles, palms, and fingertips to show constant interaction with dirt and worms. Overall, the makeup application was very successful and translated really well on screen. One challenge I faced throughout the shoot was timing. At certain points, I wanted to add additional details and progression elements from my script breakdowns between scenes, but due to the production running slightly behind schedule, there was not always enough time to stop filming for extra touch-ups. The director, cinematographer, and wider crew were all very happy with the final result, and when I later saw stills from the footage, I felt the subtle realism of the makeup worked especially well within the atmosphere of the film. Sunny Side Up was shot over 3 days and involved much heavier continuity and progression work, especially for Nathan and the Thing. Nathan's makeup focused on gradually building exhaustion and deterioration through under-eye darkness, sweat, facial hollowing, and messy hairstyling. As the film progressed, I pushed these details further to reflect his worsening mental state. Created the soft under-eye bags and hollowing eye sockets using Kryolan cream-based colors. I also added redness to the lower waterline and soft blue tones underneath the eyes to create a tired and sleep-deprived appearance. I contoured the cheeks slightly to create more hollowness and definition within the face. I also added small sweat droplets using lubricant gel to make Nathan appear more anxious and physically uncomfortable on camera. Day 2 of filming focused mainly on the Thing, making it the most technically demanding day of the entire module for me. Using the feedback Beth had given me during the test shoots, I focused heavily on yellow undertones, deep reddish-brown bruising, muted purples, and darker infected tones around the forehead, eyes, nose, and hairline. I also used sculpt gel around the cheeks and facial areas to create the disturbing burned skin texture. I also painted Sophia's teeth using the same nicotine tooth paint I had previously used on Worm God, and exaggerated the collarbones using bruised purple tones to make Sophia appear more malnourished and physically unnatural. Throughout the application process, I regularly brought Beth over to review the makeup and give feedback so we could continue refining the design together in real time. By the end of the application, Beth was extremely happy with the final design and said the creature looked exactly how she had imagined it. Overall, the full application for the thing took around 3 hours, including skin preparation, prosthetic application, painting, airbrushing, wig application, wig styling, and costume. In the end, I was really happy with both the timing and the final outcome, especially seeing how well the makeup translated on camera during filming. One of the most valuable parts of this module was learning how important collaboration and communication are within film production. As head makeup artist and designer across both productions, I had to balance my own creative ideas with the director's vision while also adapting to practical production needs and time limitations. Working closely with directors, actors, and crew helped me become more confident adapting my ideas, taking feedback, and solving problems under pressure. Working on Sunny Side Up taught me a lot about collaboration and feedback. Throughout test shoots and discussions with Beth, I learned how much a design can improve through experimentation and constructive feedback. In comparison, Worm God focused more on subtle realism and continuity, which helped me develop my attention to detail and environmental storytelling through makeup. Overall, I am very happy with the final outcomes across both productions and feel that the makeup design successfully translated from concept development into practical on-screen results. Looking back at these productions, I think one of my biggest strengths throughout the module was my ability to adapt designs throughout collaboration, feedback, and practical problem solving during filming. If I were to continue developing these projects further, I would spend even more time experimenting with practical texture effects and additional camera testing. I feel this module helped me grow significantly, both creatively and technically, while also strengthening my confidence working within collaborative film productions and horror-focused makeup designs. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation of my design process throughout the short film 4 module.